Okay, so welcome back to the Agriland Pavilion. Good weather at this time of the year normally puts tillage farmers in great form, but is that really the case in 2024? So I have three men beside me, very well qualified to answer that question. Next to me is Bobby Miller, the chair of the Irish Grain Growers Group. Next to him is Kieran McAvoy, the chairman of the IFA National Grain Committee. And furthest to my left is Gavin Carberry, the chair of the ICSA Tillage Committee. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time out to come visit us this afternoon. So for me, I suppose the obvious question to ask is the harvest. How's it progressing, and is the weather making a difference? Bobby.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Harvest in a lot of cases is fairly well wrapped up. Obviously, pockets still left later sown crops, and like so Wexford and Donegal, for example. They are still harvesting away because probably sown in May. But as a rule, most crops are harvested at this stage. Beans is probably the one that sticks out, though. That's only becoming ripe now, and probably could be 10 days or fortnight before even a lot of that is even harvested. So we've got through the harvest. It's fairly okay this year. Weather has been okay, fairly agreeable to get crops cut and straw wrapped up.
Grain prices that wouldn't be where they might want to be for yourselves?
No, absolutely not. They have basically collapsed in the last 3 to 4 weeks or month, which is of no help to us. Compare that to 2022, grain prices are back nearly 40% this year, and costs have remained high. So in that regard, well, we got good weather, fairly good weather. At the end of the day, it's margin per hectare, and that will not be great again for the tillage sector.
Kieran, would it be accurate to say that it's been a case of positive progression as the harvest has come through? We started off with a very poor July in terms of both yields and straw quality. All of those parameters were in the very negative where winter crops are concerned, and yet when the spring harvest started, there was a degree of uplift there. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, to a degree, Richard, of course, yeah. And look, thanks for the invite. I suppose the harvest, to me, was a very mixed bag. It was a very regional harvest. And even within farms, no explanation from one field to the other in some cases of huge variations in yields. And I suppose winter barley was probably, the steadfast of a lot of tillage farms for the last number of years. And it was disappointing in most cases. Very poor yields, and straw yields on those crops were back as well. I suppose we would have always had a major fear that spring barley could have been a disaster, I suppose is the best way to put it. When you're talking about sowing in the end of April into May, and even as late as the beginning of June in some cases. And to be fair to those farmers who were wise or brave or whatnot, I don't know what you call it, I suppose it's the resilience of tillage farmers to stay doing what they do. And some of those crops have come out quite well. Not in all cases, but by and large, spring barley has been probably better than we would have expected. But with that said, unfortunately, the margin is, that's there might be nil or at best minimum on those crops because of the price. And I suppose in regards to harvest and the progression of it, to me, it was a very frustrating stop-start harvest the whole way along. There was no particular run of weather. And look, we have to be very grateful for the weather we're getting in the last few days, and they're giving it into it. The people will get finished and will get the straw tidied up and baled, not like this time last year. I think this time last year we were still beating winter barley straw with a rake. And look at, out of sight, out of mind sometimes is a good help too for tillage farmers. And I think this few days are, there's pockets of barley still to be cut, even in this area, and particularly in the southeast and in the northeast as well. Pockets of barley not even ripe yet, but by and large, I suppose the bulk of the harvest is done, and it has been, quality has been quite good.
Excellent. Yeah. So Gavin, the minister, reflecting back to that period in June and July, the minister, and I'm using my own words here, stepped on a bit of a landmine when he changed the criteria linked to the straw incorporation measure, chopping versus baling. Do we have any senses yet as to how much of this year's straw actually has been baled?
Well,
And did we end up with a decent enough compromise? Were the ministers concerned?
Thanks very much, Richard, for having me on. I'm based in North Leinster, up in County Louth. We normally have a good market for straw, Cavan, Monaghan, Ulster counties. Straw yield is well down this year compared to other years, along with the grain yield. A lot of the harvest up in our neck of the woods is still not complete. We have probably approximately 30% of spring oats to cut, maybe the same in spring barley. As our colleagues here referred to, a lot of stuff was late sowed this year, and that reflected too in the straw. Now, the straw incorporation, when the minister, as you said, stepped in the landmine, to put it mildly, our phone never stopped. Farmers were worried. When they put the crop in the ground and they filled in their best application, they ticked the box to do the straw incorporation, and 90% of them had that money accounted for, before it came, and all of a sudden there was the potential of it being, eroded. So we welcome what the minister done. We think it was a great compromise, and for a further perspective, a lot of the straw that was being shopped anyhow was going to be oaten straw, oilseed rape straw. So for a further perspective, it wouldn't make that big a difference, but it would help. Our main concern in relation to straw would be the imports coming in from the UK, and we have the threat of blackgrass and all these other noxious weeds that we can't control, and maybe chemical resistant wild oats and something like that, and that's all I have our hands, and that could devastate the tillage industry going forward. Now, we see this year the area under tillage is actually reducing. Food Vision 2030, the minister went with that, and that was actually to increase the area under tillage to 400,000 hectares from approximately 300,000 where we are today. But unfortunately, it's backwards we're going at the minute, and that's all due to the cost of growing the crop and the return the farmers get.
Yeah. The minister that I'm aware of hasn't officially responded to the Tillage Vision report as yet. Bobby, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct from my understanding anyway. I suppose we're all waiting for the budget to see will there be a direct response to what was a lot of hours put in to compile that report. So I suppose the first opportunity that the minister is going to have to respond to that is the budget, upcoming budget. And he did commit earlier in the year to 30 million for the tillage sector. That's the bare minimum ask for the sector. We need the request from the Vision report was 60 million. The minister hasn't even guaranteed that 30 million yet, so we expect that to be the number one priority in this upcoming budget. But we need many changes and for the tillage sector as regards policy to recognise native Irish grain and pulses for what they are, a low carbon grain.
And Kieran, from an IFA perspective, are you of the view that there will be significant outcomings from the budget where tillage is concerned?
We're very hopeful, but there's nothing flagged yet, Richard, to be honest with you. The minister, to be fair, did give the commitment to the €40 an acre payment for this harvest. When that comes, I don't know, but he did kind of commit to that and has still committed to it. As you're aware, as Bobby has said, the Food Vision report is there. A lot of expertise, a lot of people put a lot of time into that report. And we wouldn't like to see it as a quango. We'd like to see that this is a real delivery. But I suppose in IFA, what we have felt is that there's a lot of short-term and long-term ambition in the Food Vision group. But what we feel is we need immediate action. Okay, we have had 3 huge disadvantages to the tillage sector over the last couple of years, namely the Ukrainian war causing volatility on input prices and grain prices. We've had a nitrates derogation, nothing to do with tillage farming, but it has caused a huge upset in the land rental market. And we also have had probably of the harvest of 2023, well, it's a year ago, the scars of that are still there, Richard. Yeah. And a lot of those holes and financial holes haven't been filled yet. Yeah. And, the tillage sector is at a real crisis point, and it's not to cry wolf. We want to be positive. And what we have said is that we put a policy to government looking for €100 a hectare of a payment to stabilise the tillage sector for the next 5 years. And hopefully, within 5 years, we are going to be where we are going to be with nitrates. We're going to be where we are. Hopefully, there'll be peace in the Ukraine again, and things settle down, and we get to normal trade, and inputs come back. So, while we think, the food vision is very, very important, that is completely implemented, but I think our ask now is straight away to put some bit of confidence back into tillage farmers, that they can stand up and go back into the fields again and do business, and that's what our ask is.
So that's €100 per year per
acre.
hectare for the next 5
No, per acre.
Per acre. So, apologies.
Yeah. There's no point in talking about, it's easy to say that you're going to have a target of 400,000 or 400,000. The first thing we have to do is stop the slip and people getting out. Because when you lose those people and their expertise, they're not going back.
Yeah.
If you get out of tillage, you're not going back.
No, I hear what you're saying.
And a lot of people are just hanging in, and that's not to be negative about the industry. And I mean, a lot of this money that we're looking for was already in the tillage sector, Richard, and it has been taken away by draconian measures in CAP.
Yes, agreed.
So,
yeah. Can I maybe just turn to yourself, Gavin? Do you feel that there's more could be done by other sectors within agriculture to recognise the value of tillage? For example, could there be some form of premium price mechanism put in place to incentivise the tillage sector, whether that be through dairy, beef, pig? Is there scope to allow that to happen, do you think?
Well, there's scope for a lot of maybe recycling of nutrients. There are a lot of maybe, instead of the derogation and stuff, maybe some of this slurry and farmyard manure could end up in tillage farms, and maybe some mechanism for that to be enabled.
Yeah.
We'd also like to see in ICSA the €250 a hectare for 5 years to give farmers security and commitment. There's a lot of them going to be putting crops in the ground probably within the next week, 10 days when the barley will be starting. Them guys need to know, they're going to get a viable income out of it. And in all fairness, the days of farmers just breaking even, them days should be gone. Farmers have to make a living as well, their families to support. The rural economy is very strong. And we want to see energetic young people coming into the sector, and the only way they're going to come into the sector with all the other pulls out of the sector for them is income and a security of income. So that's why we're calling on the Minister, to ensure they have at least the 250 a hectare for the next 5 years, and so tillage farmers can even compete in the rental market for land. We'd also like to see maybe there's the GLAS there, there's the acre scheme there at the minute, and there's low input pasture, and all our farmers are getting paid for that, and perhaps that could be used in the tillage, but it should be looked at.
Well, maybe come back to Bobby and pick up on one or a couple of those points. In the past, when I've spoken to you, you were very keen for farmers, Irish grain farmers, Irish tillage farmers, to get that premium price for grain, recognising the low carbon footprint of the grain that's produced on this in this country. I mean, how can that be rolled out in a very practical way for farmers, tillage farmers here?
Yeah, there's no point in asking the livestock sector to start using native Irish grain if they're not rewarded for using. So this is where government policy comes in, and this is where the dairy industry and the meat industry can play their part. They're already giving sustainability payments to dairy farmers, and you have in the meat industry you have quality assurance payments. We need to incentivise the use of native Irish grain, and that comes from government policy and the rest of the other industries to recognise native Irish grain. Climate change is constantly being spoken about now, and we have the ideal product here in Ireland.
Yeah.
What we also need to do, though, Richard, is add value to what we grow. 75-80% of our grains goes directly to feed mills. We need to invest in primary processing, where we add value to the grain and pulses first, and then have the byproduct available for the feed industry. So we need to get away from just growing grain to provide feed, because that we are competing with the South Americas or Mercosur countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, That's our competition, and we have to move away from that being our competition if we have to have a future for this sector.
Okay. You touched on this principle of added value. I suppose the poster crop for, if I can use that term, for adding value in this country is malting barley. Here, is there scope to increase the tonnages of malting barley that we're producing here significantly beyond where we are at the moment?
I suppose there's definitely room for increase, and I suppose over the last 6 or 7 years there has been a huge increase in the amount of malt that is assembled and produced in Ireland, and there's been big investment in facilities, particularly here very close to here in Athy through Bournemouth. They've spent a lot of money in the plant down there, and I know they have plans to invest more as it goes forward. We would envisage that there's probably somewhere around 250,000 tonnes of grain going into the malting industry now, which represents a large percentage of the crop. We probably would see that could go to 300,000 quite quickly. And look at we have a relationship with Bournemouth. We try and work with them to negotiate and improve the crop, and it can be a frustrated relationship sometimes, but we're all on the one side to try and get as much barley as possible into the malting process, and get a premium for that.
Great stuff. Guys, 20 minutes have flown by. I can't believe our conversation. I have to draw it to a close. Thank you all so much for coming in today. And I get a sense that Tillage can look forward to a reasonably confident and upbeat future. Thank you all.
Thanks very much,
Thanks,
Richard.
Richard.
Thank you.
Richard.